Hi, I'm Chris Crisitiello, your host for the Newton Conservators Environmental Show. This is our second session entitled Living with Wildlife in Newton, based on a lecture given at the Newton Free Library by Colleen Olfenbuttel of the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. In the last session, she acquainted us with some of the new creatures seen in Newton, giving us information about their habitat and their lifestyle. In this session, she'll tell us about the ways in which we can learn to live with this new wildlife with respect for their needs and our own. Colleen will give us some information as how we can deal with coyotes and wild turkeys that seem to intrude in our territory.
Pretty much all these animals I've talked about, from the large mammals such as the bear and the deer, to the possums, the raccoons, coyotes, foxes, they're all doing well in the suburban environment. And again, it's because I've talked about they're highly adaptable, opportunistic feeders, and they need to use their energy efficiently. Basically, from their perspective, why should they go out in the woods and have to chase down a prey item or really search around for some good foliage to eat when they can go to the neighborhood, go to your backyard and get easy food, and also it's a protected environment. They don't have to worry usually about a hunter. They don't usually have to worry about some other predator getting them because, again, the suburban environment is a fairly protected environment. They're safe there. So when we do have problems, and people call in, they kind of, one of the first questions we get is, can you just move the animal? I don't want to see the animal get destroyed. I don't want it to be killed. I just don't want it in my backyard. And the thing is, we are not allowed to relocate animals. It's actually against state law. And there's several reasons behind this. One is it could potentially spread disease. As you know, in the Cape, they're having a lot of problems with rabies. And we're really concerned about rabies spreading across western Massachusetts. So rabies is just one example of a disease that we do not want to accidentally spread to other parts of the state that don't have it yet. And so by relocating an animal, we could possibly reintroduce disease into another population that doesn't have that disease. So that's one reason. Another just transfers the problem. So if you have a coyote that you think is a problem, maybe it's becoming more visible around people, maybe becoming more bold, or you have another animal that's becoming more bold. If we relocate it, it's just going to be a problem for someone else. It just transfers the problem and doesn't address it. The other thing is animals do return. They have a strong homing instinct. So once you release an animal, in all likelihood, it'll just try to get back to where it was. And they've done a lot of research on this. I've seen it myself where we tried to relocate wolves that were, they were causing a problem at, a ranch. We'd move these wolves to a spot they'd never been to, 300-400 miles away, middle of nowhere. There's tons of deer there. There's great, prey items for those wolves. Yet as soon as we release them, boom, they start going back, and within less than a week, they're back to where they were. I've seen that with black bears also. They will try whatever they can to get back to where they were, and that's because that's their home. They want to get back, and in the process of trying to get back, either they get killed because they get hit by a car, they encounter more people, or if they don't make it, sometimes it's hard for them to adjust to where they are. They just don't know where the food supplies is, and they have to compete with other animals that they're unfamiliar with. Again, competition. They're with new animals. They don't have a relationship set up, and so they're the low animal on the totem pole in that new area, and they usually don't survive. So relocation is not an option for us when we have a problem animal. So, the point of this talk is, a lot of times, a lot of people think it's, us versus them, us humans against the wildlife. And what we're trying to do, what our role, at Division of Fisheries and Wildlife is just try to find a middle ground. We want to balance the needs of wildlife, managing wildlife, with human safety concerns and, what the public wants and needs. So hopefully, with the next few slides in which I tell you what more you can do to try to live with wildlife, try to be proactive in preventing a problem, we can avoid this situation where it is us versus them. So first, don't feed pets outdoors. Or if you do feed your dog or cat outside, as soon as the animal's finished eating, pick up that bowl, because you know, a wild animal likes dog chow just as much as your pet does, and they will key in on that. I mean, animals have to survive, and to survive, they've really developed a good sense of smell and sight, and they really can key in on food we leave behind. So don't feed your pets outdoors, or if you do, pick up the bowl afterwards so that wildlife does not key into it. Again, keep your pets and cats indoors, because as soon as your cat leaves your house, it becomes part of the environment. And it's not only wildlife that that the cat has to be concerned about. I mean, it has to be concerned about fishers, coyotes, foxes, although in this picture the cat seems to be getting the upper hand. Raccoons, possums, cars, diseases, raptors. I think 2 years ago, a researcher went into a bald eagle nest in Massachusetts and found 50 cat collars in this bald eagle nest. So, you know, not only do cats have to worry about what's on the ground, but what's coming up from above. So when your cat leaves your house, it's encountering a lot of threats. And again, that's why I keep my cat inside, is to keep it safe. The other thing is, from our perspective as a wildlife division, is we're concerned about migratory birds, especially passerine birds. And it's been documented that besides, you know, the decline in habitat, that the number 2 reasons we're seeing a decline in our songbird populations is domestic cats. Birds just, you know, they didn't evolve to protect themselves against domestic cats, and domestic cats, even so we're feeding them, they still have that instinct to chase something when they see it move. And so even so they're not hungry and you know they're getting fed well, that instinct is strong enough that they kill a lot of birds, millions of birds every year. So our message is you should keep your cat inside for its health, but also for the health of songbirds. Keep your bird feeder areas clean, and the main way you can do that is just by adding a saucer underneath the bird feeder, because what you're doing is when the birds are eating, they're dropping seeds all over the ground, and that's going to attract a lot of wildlife that's going to eat those seeds. But it also attracts squirrels, chipmunks, and other small mammals that again are prey items for some of the larger animals such as coyotes, foxes, bobcat, and fisher. So keep your bird feeder areas clean. If you start to see animals, wildlife in your yards that you don't want there, and you have a bird feeder, maybe keep your bird feeder in for a few days, even maybe for a couple weeks. Just get rid of that food source that's not only attracting them because of the bird seed that's on the ground, but also the prey animals that the bird feeder attracts. So maybe remove that for a few weeks, so then that wild animal will just kind of keep passing on through, because that's what wildlife does. If it finds a spot that's providing good food, it'll stay there. But if that food source is not there, it'll just keep on going through and find another area to use. We're seeing more and more people having compost piles, which, you know, we think it's great. You know, it helps reduce our waste, but you need to make sure it's clean. You know, a lot of times people, you know, set up, a fenced-in box, and they just put the food in, and they just have an open pile. Well, that is going to attract a lot of animals such as coyotes. Again, coyotes eat everything we eat. So that's just a big buffet waiting for an animal to take advantage of. So try to keep your compost areas clean so that it doesn't attract the wildlife. Because even if they can smell it, if they can't get into it, they're going to leave it alone and move on. Keep trash picked up. We have reports of coyotes that have learned the pattern of trash pickup in certain communities. So they go in one neighborhood and they know, okay, Monday night, everybody puts their garbage out. Boom, 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 boom. Then they go to maybe the west side of town because it's Tuesday, and that's when they put their garbage out. Boom, 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 boom. These animals are smart. So what we do is, if you do have to put your garbage out the night before because your garbage man picks it up at like 5 a.m. in the morning, put it in a container. It's just something to seal it up. So 1, you decrease the amount of scent in the area, but 2, it makes it harder for the animal to get into. Other methods you can do is exclusion, and this is more, you know, with raccoons and other smaller animals, keeping them out of your basements, keeping them out of your attics. Just any open spaces into your house, make sure somehow it's covered up so the animal can't even get in. Because the last thing we want, and I've gotten calls, we've all gotten calls about, you know, a skunk in someone's basement. You know, that's not something I ever would want to deal with personally, and I really sympathize with the person on the other line. And it's a difficult situation. No one wants to get, you know, skunked. So the thing you can do is be proactive. Look at your house. Look at any holes that are in your house, even your chimney, and just cover them up with some simple fencing. It's pretty inexpensive and easy to do. Again, close off crawl spaces. And I have installed fencing, and that's, sometimes animals can be persistent. So, sometimes you have a garden and maybe, an animal's getting in there. We encourage people to try to use fencing, because once that animal finds out you have that garden, it's going to keep trying to get in, and nothing short of actually killing the animal will stop it except for fencing. So put some fencing around an area. And more details about the type of fencing you can use, what animals it's most effective, and how to put in the fencing. We do have that all on our website, or you can call any of us and we can give you much more detail than I'm going into now. Again, this is just an example of someone's shed that's just an open invitation for any number of animals to take advantage of, from a raccoon possum to a coyote family. Okay, some other tips is harassment, or what we say intimidation. And actually, this is probably one of the biggest things you can do to pretty much tell wildlife not to be in your area. What I like to tell people is, you have a coyote. The coyote is territorial with other coyotes, telling the other coyotes to stay away from my area. I like to tell people, you need to be territorial with the coyote. You need to send the message to that coyote that your yard and your house is going to stay coyote free. And you do that by intimidating it. And a lot of people are worried about harassing wildlife. They get concerned that the wildlife will react back at them, might attack them. But wildlife, they're naturally afraid of us. And we need to make sure they keep that fear of us. They keep that natural fear of humans. And we do that by intimidation. And it could be as simple as lights, switching on a light or shining a flashlight. If that doesn't work, loud noises, clapping your hands, banging pots, yelling, and then stepping it up. If you're in your backyard and you see a fox or a coyote or any other type of wildlife that you do not want in your yard, spray it with a water hose. Lastly, I have tennis balls up there. Tennis balls or any type of object, throw at the animal. Don't try to knock it on the head and kill it, but throw it at it, because again, we want to make sure that animal learns to have that negative association with people. And animals, again, they're quick learners. If they find out that, I can be in this person's yard, they're never bothering me, I can just lay in the sun and no one gives me any trouble, they're going to get more bold, because they're learning they can get away with it. And so we have to make sure that they don't get away with it. I mean, it's just like, the saying, you don't give someone an inch because they'll take, a foot or take a mile. Wildlife will do the same. They kind of learn what they can get away with, and they'll keep trying to get away with it unless we tell them, no, we are bad, you don't want to be near us, and this is why. And we use these steps to intimidate them to keep that natural fear. Again, I can't emphasize enough, no food sources. Again, you'd be surprised what animals will key in your yard. And not only in your yard, but in your neighbor's yard. So a lot of times when we have coyotes in the neighborhood, we tell people, yes, you're probably doing everything you should be doing, but you need to kind of make sure your neighbors are doing the same thing. Because if your neighbors are not doing the same thing, if they're leaving garbage out or they're leaving dog food out, the coyote's going to stay in the area. So it kind of needs to be a neighborhood effort to make sure that if all of you are in agreement that you don't want this animal here, at least not as much as you're seeing it, work with your neighbors to make sure everybody's doing the right thing. Because it only takes one person to kind of mess it up, to make, one person feeding that animal to keep the animal in the neighborhood. And again, a fed animal is a dead animal. We can't relocate it. If the animal's used to getting food, it becomes more bold, there's only so much we can do, and if it becomes a problem, we do have to kill that animal, because it does become a risk to human safety if that animal becomes more bold, gets away with more and more and more. Sometimes the only solution is to remove it. And I don't think, I think that's the last solution we all want to see, but it is a solution we have to take if people aren't doing what they should be doing to make sure they keep that natural fear of humans in the animal. Now, one thing, I've been talking mainly about mammals, and so the last few slides I wanted to get more into birds. And I'm a fur bearer biologist, which means I have about 13 mammals that I'm in charge of. So this is not my specialty, nor is my background in birds, but I know enough that I want to talk about turkeys and Canada geese, because I know that's also been a concern in several neighborhoods. So first, we have the turkey, and Turkeys, have become more, we get lots of reports of turkeys becoming very aggressive. And the main reason they're aggressive is, one, during the breeding season, they're trying to show off for their mates. So they're showing off, they're being aggressive with other male turkeys. And unfortunately, turkeys don't see too well, so sometimes either one, they'll see their reflection in a window or in a hubcap or in a mirror, and they'll think it's another turkey and they'll go after it. But other times we've had turkeys, they look at a person and they think it's a turkey. Or it sounds silly, but it's true. These turkeys, they don't see that well. We've had reports of turkeys going after cars, and it's during the breeding season. And of course, we never know for sure because we're not turkeys, but they think it's another turkey, and they're going after it. The other thing we have, all during the years, they have what's called the pecking order. And turkeys constantly in their groups have a pecking order where there's the dominant individual and then so on and so forth. And they're always fighting for that position. So they can be very aggressive with each other. And again, they think people are turkeys. And that's a lot of times why we see turkeys going after people. I think I heard that in Newton or somewhere nearby, a post office employee was constantly attacked by a turkey in the neighborhood. So turkeys, you don't think of them as a problem, but they can be very aggressive. And when you have a turkey that's like 20 pounds, I don't know if you've ever seen, they can have quite talons. They can cause a lot of damage. So what we want to talk about is preventing any conflicts with turkeys. And the main thing is don't feed turkeys, because like other wildlife, they learn people aren't a threat and they'll become more bold and more aggressive. The other thing is, by feeding them, you're kind of concentrating them in one spot, usually concentrating them in a neighborhood, so that it's more likely they're going to encounter people. And again, they don't see too well, so that's more likely going to increase the chance that someone's going to get attacked. Again, keep your bird feed areas clean, because again, the turkeys are keying in to the seeds on the ground. Use scare tactics. Some people use their dogs. They don't necessarily let their dogs attack and kill the turkeys, but just the barking of the dogs sometimes keeps those turkeys away. Loud noises, again, water hoses, broom. Our turkey biologist likes to tell people if they have a coyote or have a turkey in their yard and they don't want it there, or the turkey's actually attacking them, take an umbrella and open and close it and run at it. And he gives us advice. I hear him, he's across my house. Every day he gives us advice to people, and it seems to work. You might look a bit foolish, but it works. Again, cover reflective objects with, cover your reflective objects, because again, the turkey's seeing that its image and it thinks it's another turkey and it's going to go after that. And that's why we see a lot of damage to cars. One, because turkeys are roosting on the cars, but two, the turkey sees its reflection in the windshield or in the hubcaps and it's just pecking at it and destroying this poor person's car. So I don't know, if turkeys are starting to key into your car, maybe just cover it up or put it in the garage or do something, because that turkey will attack it. Fencing, if you have turkeys going into a certain area of your yard that you want protected, just put up some fencing. Doesn't take much, maybe just 2 or 3 foot high chicken wire fencing you can buy at Home Depot for $10. Just put it around it. That's enough of a barrier that the turkey will stay out. And lastly, I do put hunting up there because hunters do control the population. Right now, we really don't have any natural predators on most of our wildlife. So there's nothing controlling their numbers except for people. We're filling the role of being the natural predator. We've become, that's our responsibility. So hunting does control turkey numbers, but hunting does instill a fear of people in a lot of animals, especially coyotes. We've seen, there's been research done that in areas where there's hunting of coyotes, the coyotes have learned that, people are bad, because when we're near people, we hear a bang, and one of our family members dies. And as, sometimes some people think that's really sad, but in the end, it does instill that fear of people in the animal and keeps them, it decreases the chance that they're going to, try to get near people or come into neighborhoods or be aggressive with people. The other thing I want to talk about is the Canada geese. And there's 2 types. A lot of people don't realize that we actually have 2 types of geese in Massachusetts, both Canada geese, but we have a migratory population and a resident population. And the resident population actually comes from the 1930s. Back then, hunters used live captive geese as decoys. And so in the 1930s, that was banned. Well, when it was banned, the hunters released these domestic captive geese. Well, these geese, they didn't have any migratory patterns. They'd never migrated before. So they pretty much, instead of migrating with, their cousins, they kind of stayed in Massachusetts and nested. And that's what we see in the pictures down below. That's what we're seeing, where we're seeing the problems, is in the resident geese population. Again, they are different from the migratory birds. And again, geese, it's not their presence that causes a problem, but it's the number. As you can see in this pond, there's hundreds of birds, and that can cause a lot of problems just from the damage they do to the lawn, to the shrubs, vegetation, of course, the feces they leave behind. So it definitely can be a concern when there's too many. So what we're trying to do is, again, decrease the conflicts that occur. Again, just like all other wildlife, don't feed them. They're going to, by feeding them, you get them to concentrate in high numbers in one area, and that's where we really see the problems. It also causes them to lose their fear. And we do once in a while see geese become aggressive towards people because, they want food from a person, the person doesn't have bread to give to the bird, and that goose is not happy and will actually sometimes go after the person. The other thing about feeding goose and any other animals is it's not their natural diet. And they've done studies to show that feeding bread to birds is really poor for their diet. It can actually have a really negative effect on the health of that bird. So really, you're not helping that bird by feeding it bread because there's no nutritional value in that bread for that bird. If you do have problems with geese in your area, you can, again, use dogs to scare the geese away. Some people put out decoys. They'll put out decoys of coyotes or foxes or other predators, natural predators on geese. And you can't just put the decoy out there because, again, geese, like many other animals, they learn. So you have to kind of keep moving those decoys around. Because if you don't, the geese will kind of start figuring out, that coyote just sits there day in and day out. It's not a threat. If it's alive, it doesn't care about me. So it's not going to worry about it. So you need to keep moving those decoys around so that the bird doesn't key into that. And loud noises. A lot of companies are starting to produce loud noises so that when geese are in an area, boom, a loud noise goes off and the geese fly away. Again, trying to make the area really unpleasant for the geese to stay in. You can use barriers to protect certain areas. Geese, what they like to do is when they feed, they go from the water to wherever they want to go to eat. And they also like to be able to see around them. So just putting like a bed of flower, shrubs, heavy flowers, uncut weeds, some kind of natural barrier is enough to keep a goose out of an area that you want protected. Because again, if there's a fence there or shrubs or something just a couple feet high, that goose won't go beyond it. They really don't typically fly over something to get to another spot. So if they encounter that barrier, they're just going to turn around. So that's something you can use if you do, again, want to protect a certain area, such as your garden or your flowers. Again, I put hunting up there. We have done research that in order to control the resident population from increasing out of control is that 30 to 35% of geese need to be hunted in order to keep the population at a level that's good for the geese, but also tolerable for people where it's not causing problems. Beavers, that's a whole almost other issue. I could probably speak for 2 more hours on beavers. And I'm not sure, do you guys have beavers in Newton? No? Okay. Hopefully you won't have to deal with beavers anytime soon. But beavers are becoming a problem in Massachusetts, or they have been a problem because they're natural engineers. They like to change their landscape. They like to turn it into a wetland, which provides great habitat for other animals, but of course ends up flooding houses and homes nearby. So again, our website has more information, but it sounds like Newton isn't being troubled by beavers just yet. So that hopefully won't be another day. We encourage people from the public to call us. I think the local district office for this area is in Acton. I think there's phone numbers on the pamphlets in the back, so if you ever have any wildlife questions, you want to report a sighting of any type of wildlife or you have a concern, call that number. We like to hear from the public. In fact, it's the public that really gives us our information of what's going on out there, because there's only a few of us and we're scattered all across Massachusetts, but there's millions of you. I mean, we really depend on your eyes and your ears to tell us what's going on, especially in communities like this. So I know I get calls every day from people not only seeing things but having questions. I have a sheet, I write it down, I record it. It gives me more information of where the wildlife is occurring. So if any of you ever want to talk about more about any type of wildlife or have concerns, you can always feel free to call me up, call one of our districts up, the biologist, and ask more questions to find answers to your questions. Again, we want to make sure you have the answers you need to feel comfortable going outside, enjoying being outside, and living with the wildlife. We don't want you to be scared to step outside your house. So with that, I'll just like to open the floor to any questions that you might have that I didn't cover. Oh, thank you.
Went out for a walk during the day. It's not unusual in my neighborhood to see a family of wild turkeys
Okay.
or to see a coyote. What's the best lines of defense other than turning in the opposite direction?
Well, one, we say don't turn in the opposite direction. Don't do it, because that is one thing, especially coyotes will be like, you know, they kind of will figure out they can rule the neighborhood. That's the last message we want to send to the coyotes. We want to send a message to coyotes that, no, this is your neighborhood. You have the right to be there. They don't. So if I were you, when you see coyotes, keep walking, but again, yell at them, scream at them. You know, if you see a small rock on the side, throw it towards them. Again, just make it unpleasant. With turkey, the best thing is, you know, if they're, you know, make sure they're not feeding on any artificial food source. You know, make sure no one's feeding them bird food or accidentally providing bird food to them. A lot of times with turkeys, I mean, you can do these intimidation tactics. More we tell people with turkeys to intimidate them when the turkeys are being more aggressive towards them. But if you do have turkeys, a lot of times they're passing through. We've had reports of where a neighborhood has a bunch of turkeys, next year nothing. And it's just because turkeys move constantly, year after year after year, they go to a new spot. But with the turkeys, I would say, and with the coyotes, make sure there's no food source. And if you don't want them there, you know, do things, again, make noises, you know, chase them with the broom, do stuff to make it really unpleasant for them to stay there. Especially if you do see that they're starting to become more bold around people. They seem to have started to lose their fear. Again, be territorial. Yeah.
In closing, we'd like to thank Colleen and the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife for making this series possible. And meanwhile, remember to visit our website, www.newtonconservators.org. And there you can get information about how to obtain a copy of Walking Trails, which provides information about walking trails in all the open spaces and parks in Newton. Till next time, this is Chris Criscitiello for the Environmental Show and the Newton Conservators.